Welcome back to the Milwaukee Market Update. We're covering real estate news and data and breaking it down to help you understand how it impacts your real estate decisions. Teaser, what will happen in 2024? We'll give you our predictions.
What to take away from this episode, what we think buyers, sellers, and investors should do in 2024 based on the data that we see here today. Will you be competing with Jeff Bezos on your next home purchase? Interest rates down to 6% next year? What?
Question mark?
What? Maybe? And also, how much should you spend if you go to Phoenix and are looking to play pickleball? Ty's got some opinions, and the old man out there has other opinions too.
Find out more. We're here to give you the info you need to make the right decision regarding your real estate. Should I buy a home now? Should I be selling? Is the housing market about to crash? Are these headlines I'm reading, content I'm seeing on social media true or even relevant to me? If you're new to the show or returning because you found value in our previous videos and episodes, it means the world to us if you would take a second to subscribe, either on YouTube or podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram, TyAsh31 and Nick Harrington28, or reach out via MilwaukeeMarketUpdate.com. I'm Ty.
I'm Nick.
With House Expected at Compass, your local real estate experts. All right, let's start with our quick tips. Home buyers, here's what we got for you. So why would you want to get pre-approved more than 3 months before you buy? Because usually most pre-approvals are written for only 60 to 90 days. That means, why would I get pre-approved if that means it's just going to lapse before I'm actually ready to buy in 2023? Here might be why. So what a pre-approval gets for you is it makes sure that your financial situation will allow you to buy a home at a certain price range. Sometimes lenders can actually uncover some bogeys, I guess is what I call them, where like, oh, our credit score is like right at the threshold. It actually dropped us into a higher interest rate. Or I'm self-employed and I didn't reflect enough income on my 2021 and 2022 taxes. I might need to prepare my 2023 taxes in a different way. Those are some of the things where if you might have some of those more unique situations or you're potentially on the cuff of that credit score rating, this could actually help you pre-plan for a purchase 6 months from now and start that pre-approval process early.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think even too, if it's not a true full-blown pre-approval, it's having that conversation with the lender of like, what does your capital on hand look like? What's your income? What expenses do you have? What debts do you have? So you can start preparing and planning to maybe pay off debts, save more than you're doing right now.
Or crazy enough, not pay off debts. For example, student loans might be your longest form of credit. And if you just pay them all off right now, you could actually see your credit score go down because that's your longest thing of credit history. That's your longest and highest credit history that you have out there.
Yep.
So a couple things that lender could help to give you a tip there.
Cool.
What do you got for homeowners?
Homeowners, I think we're approaching the end of the year here. I think this is going to be our last podcast in 2023, right?
Yeah.
So new year always brings reflection on the past year and plans and goals and resolutions for the next year. I would say if you're planning on selling your home in 2024, you know what's going to happen. Now might be a time to kind of start sprucing up your house in terms of easy cosmetic things that the average home buyer is going to like. Maybe that means painting. Maybe that means refinishing a bathroom or a kitchen. But starting that a bit earlier, start budgeting for that. That's something that you could start doing now. So it's not, we want to sell in a month and all of a sudden it's crunch time and we're painting and redoing everything in the house.
Yeah. Typically January is a slower month for contractors, especially for inside work. Like you might actually be able to get some better prices if you start getting them on the schedule now, because they're probably not really thinking, because guess what? Contractors enjoy the holidays and take a break too in their businesses. Mm-hmm. They maybe don't have that calendar totally filled. So you might get better pricing. You might get it done rather than waiting till the last minute.
Yeah. Cool.
Perfect. And then investors, it's that time of year. Goal setting time. What advice do you have for them? What quick tips?
Yeah, I would say new year, new investor, who knows? But now is also a great time to start thinking, what are my 2024 goals for investing and getting a bit tactical with it. Is that a certain number of doors that you want to have? Is that a certain number of cash flow? Is that a certain number of total asset value that you want to have or equity? Whatever that looks like, it's a great time to kind of start planning for the next year and getting very specific with what those goals are. And then also, more importantly, what are the daily steps that you can take to actually help you reach those goals?
I think the daily steps what you can take is probably the biggest tip there is like, my goal is to own one investment property in 2024. What is the list of, essentially stealing from that bigger pockets thing, most important next step that you actually need to do? It's, okay, I need to talk to an agent so I can look at listings. Mm-hmm. I need to talk to a lender to learn, can I even get pre-approved? What is every step in order? and you can just start chalking those down and knocking them down 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, and actually get closer to maybe you don't even pull the trigger until November, December next year, but you've actually taken consistent steps each month.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, perfect. So now let's dive into the numbers for our local market here in Milwaukee, obtained through the MLS. We're going to have a little bit more of a focus here on what are our predictions for 2024. So we're going to say what happened here in the month of November, and then we're actually going to say what is going to happen for some of these key stats.
Guaranteed what will happen in 2024.
Guaranteed. You can write it down on paper and hold us accountable to it.
And then by the time next year, no one's going to remember this anyway, so it won't matter.
Yeah, and we'll delete the episode if we're wrong. So, so let's go through the quick overview of all the stats. New listings, 1,200, up just about 1% versus a year ago. Pending sales, 400, up 6% versus a year ago. Closed sales, 1,100 homes, down 2%. Days on market, 21 days versus 22 days a year ago. Median sales price, $312,000, up 7% versus a year ago, and actually up about $2,000 versus last month. Usually, that's kind of weird. We'll see if that has any sort of trends, anything that makes us think about a 2024 prediction. Average sales price, $380,000, up almost 10% versus last year. Percent of original list price, or that percent over asking, in this case, percent under asking, 98.5 versus 98.4 a year ago, relatively no change. Inventory of homes for sale, the active inventory that you can buy, 2,500 homes, flat to a year ago. And months of supply of inventory, 2.2 months versus 2.1 a year ago. That's our quick overview. As always, we really do a deeper dive into some of those more important things. I think the biggest thing that we're tracking right now are new listings and how that impacts inventory. Inventory is our supply. How is demand changing? So starting with new listings, we have our now fourth consecutive month of, though it's a small increase to a year ago, it's an increase nonetheless. So we're up 1% the last 3 months versus a year ago new listings. And back in August, actually up 8%. That's led to some good newness coming to the market, though it's still down from historical levels. Any commentary you have here on just new listings and how it came in the month of November?
Yeah, I think with November specifically, it's very flat to where it was a year ago. And we're now circling that 12-month period where rates have been historically high. So we're kind of starting to see, okay, it's been 1 year with rates where they are. What's that now doing from a long-term perspective in the market? And to me, from August to November, you mentioned this, year over year, there's been higher new listings than last year for 4 straight months. And so to me, this is saying that the market is now understanding that rates are where they are.
Yep.
People are accepting that, and we're seeing new inventory hit the market. Granted, it's less inventory if we look year to date from where we are today than last year, but it's on a monthly, year-over-year basis higher.
Yeah.
And to me, this is what we're needing in the market right now. We're needing more listings in this market, because if we go on to pending sales, we have seen a massive increase in the amount pending year over year, especially for the last 4 or 5 months. And so listings is a leading indicator. Pending is then taking a look at, okay, what's going to happen next? And then closed sales is more of a lagging indicator. And if there's not new listings, there's not going to be new closed.
That's right.
So all this together, to me, it's still showing that the market is reacting to the interest rates. There's less new inventory, but we're starting to become a little bit more comfortable to where rates are, and we're starting to see inventory slowly start to pick up. Very slowly, it feels like.
Yeah. So as we kind of pivot towards what's going to happen in 2024 for new listings, if you follow this online on YouTube, we always try to share these charts. Now I've got the Redfin data where it shows essentially the line chart from 2020, 2021, 22, 23. So you can actually do these comparisons. You can see this is by far the lowest, last 4 years worth of new listing activity, definitely historical lows. We're trying to say interest rates are going to have an impact on this, and we'll talk more about where we sit today, but we're seeing some positive momentum of interest rates coming down. Now, what we kind of talked about before, and we were just having an open conversation before we started the show, is what path will new listings show? Will it look like 2020, where we had a lot of new listings because people were moving up? Are we going to have it like 2021, where we had consistent low rates for the entire year? Or will it be almost an inverse of what we saw in 2022, where we started at low rates and ended with higher, or similar to rates are today? Where do you think it's headed?
So my crystal ball prediction is we're seeing the Fed right now. Rates are sitting where at like 6.5 today.
Yeah, we're getting almost down to like 6.4. So.
And where we were about a month ago, like in the mid
7.5, almost getting up to 8s.
So we're seeing already in about a month that mortgage rates have cut down about 1%. The Fed is signaling that further rate drops will be coming as well. So if we go with that trend, that rates are going to drop next year. My prediction is we're seeing this already as rates have kind of come down, but have now just been, let's say they've stayed the same for the last year. People are ready and are willing to sell their home.
Yeah.
For every seller, there's typically a buyer. That means that new buyer is probably going to have a higher rate than what they would have 2, 3, 4 years ago when they're selling their property. My prediction is if rates drop, we're going to see higher inventory hit the market. We're going to see a bunch of new buyers into the market as well.
Yeah.
And I kind of think prices are going to continue to go up as they have, because I don't see a world where prices soften unless there is some massive shift in the economy. Everything that I've seen for the last November report coming down to, especially consumer spending, was up in November compared to where it was last year, which to me is a sign that people are still willing to go out there and buy things and spend money.
Yep.
The economy from the outside view looks healthy. And so unless there's a massive shift in the economy from like an unemployment perspective, people are going to be still wanting to buy and sell houses. So my prediction, as rates go down, we're going to see more sales, more new inventory, and we're going to see prices continue to appreciate as well.
Yeah. And the biggest thing is determining what is going to win that will drive prices. Is it going to be, are we going to get more inventory than demand? Or are we going to get more demand than inventory? And how's that going to actually impact what happens to prices next year? If you have that demand coming back in a stronger force, because interest rates actually take a considerable drop, you'll see prices go up higher, have more competition. If we get that, burst of inventory, but the demand doesn't recover as quickly because maybe interest rates only have a small improvement, we'll kind of see where those things, the tug and pull. So
what do you think is going to happen?
I think we're going to see the inverse of what we saw in 2022. So I think we're going to see new listing activity kind of flat, but not getting worse, maybe slightly better at the first half of the year, first 6 months. And then if we get rates that are lower than 6%, and we're almost having better interest rates relative to a year ago, we're going to start seeing a lot more newness come, because it's a lot easier to make those why decisions of, we've outgrown our home, we had a kid, we changed our job, maybe we will relocate to this new area, and we're not as obsessed about our 4% or 5% rate when rates are 5 or 6%. So that's kind of what I think.
And I'm with you too. And I think for there to be more supply than demand, right now there is way more demand than supply. And the days on market shows that, the price year over year shows that, the percent over list price shows that, and also the months of supply shows that. All 4 of those factors and metrics are showing that we're in a demand market right now where demand is higher than supply. And so for that to switch, that's going to have to be a significant amount of inventory. It's going to have to be just all of a sudden unloaded, or there'd have to be something that would change for demand to drop, which everything that I'm seeing, interest rates is kind of the leading indicator, and the and the economy, it's kind of the leading indicator of buyer demand. And I don't see those two things happening.
Yeah, totally agree. As we go into closed sales now, so like you said already, you went into it, if we have new listings, more can go under contract and go pending, and the more that go pending, the more that can close. So we have November at down 2%, last month was up 2%, on the year we're closer to down 20%. So we're seeing a considerable change in the trend, mostly because this is the lagging indicator we have. We already know what kind of the first quarter of the year is going to look like. We've continued to get new listings. We should continue to see this metric improve, because this lags behind the data we saw in new listings. Now, this essentially, we can just scroll right through this, because we know as we get new listings, and we just gave our predictions, if we see more listings, we expect to see more transactions closed in 2024. Now, as we go into median sales price, we also hit on this as well. We just ended at $312,000 in the month of November. Our peak here in 2023 was just right around $350,000. Prices overall look like they're essentially going to land at going up 8% year over year. This is I think what a lot of people want to know. If they're about to buy a home, they want to know next year, is my home going to be worth more than when I'm buying right now? Am I buying at the right or wrong time? Let's just do one quick dive into here. Where do you think housing prices are going to go next year? And you can put your caveats of, because I think interest rates are going this way. What's the percent change?
I think it's going to be about 7% again. Home price increase. One thing I think is a little interesting looking at this data is here historically, month over month, prices don't increase in the winter months.
Yeah.
Starting around, I would call it like June, July time, all the way to pretty much February, prices typically tick down month over month. We're seeing here that prices went up from October to November. So it didn't go up much. It went up about $2,000 on average, but it is still interesting to me looking at this historical chart here, seeing that that is definitely not the norm month over month in the winter months for prices to
and
hold
it could
their value
be,
like that or go up.
It could be a sneak peek of relatively, if we looked a couple months ago and rates kind of hit close to 8, and then all of a sudden the buyers who are shopping are like, well, at least it's not 8, I got 7 or 6.75. You might have just saw a little bit of extra activity there, a little bit of extra competition, trying to get into the house before we hit the holiday time frame. There's a whole bunch of anecdotal things that could drive that. Now, thank you for asking what my opinion is.
Yeah, Todd, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, thanks, dude. Thanks. So I think we're at super low inventory right now. And if rates get below 6%, I would be shocked if our price increase in median price didn't end up being between 8 and 10% again. We've been between 8 and 10% home prices going up in 2020, 21, 22, even 23. We're only at 8%, and this was a bad year. But again, that inventory, we're starting really low. We're kind of starting behind the 8 ball because of how low new listing activity was this year. I'd be shocked if we saw where prices are less than 8. The black swan that could kind of make that where it's going to be less than up 5%, I think, is if rates do bounce back up to 7 to 8% and they remain at 7 to 8% for this entire year. That would be the thing that might keep prices lower than increasing 5% every year. Great. And then as we kind of wrap up here, months of supply, we always like doing a quick hit on this, mostly because this is seasonally adjusted for the supply we have and the demand that we have. Again, we're at 2.2 months. Healthy is considered to be 4 to 6 months. Last year was at 2.1. So essentially the same levels of supply and demand that we had last year, slightly better, to like the most marginal extent. This is going to be the metric where we'll be able to track month over month, and we're actually analyzing our predictions of where it's going to look after 3 months of activity, 6 months of activity in 2024. If we start seeing this tick up to 2.5 to 3, we're going to be probably going more towards your prediction of, home prices going up 7. If this actually gets worse, we might be getting a little bit closer to my prediction of demand is outpacing supply.
Yeah, I think so too. And looking back historically, we haven't had a month of supply hit 4 months, which is considered that healthy market since, 2019?
Yeah.
So when rates
in the winter too.
In the winter, yeah, when it's like a historically slow season. People move in the winter, obviously, but not as many people want to move in the middle of school season or when it's snow on the ground. And so from basically 2019 all the way to now, it's been well below 4 months of supply, well below 3 months of supply. And so that's when rates were down in the 3 to 4% for a while too, just because of where demand was. It's kind of interesting because we look back historically, there was so much demand that because of where rates were. And now, even though there's less transactions happening, there's still probably the same amount of demand as compared to supply.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so.
And, we're kind of seeing those. I mean, if you go back to 2020, we've essentially had the exact same months of supply dating back to essentially 2020, where we had a little bit of months of supply, closer to 3 months as we entered COVID.
I guess the thing that's so interesting to me about this is that that was a vastly different market where rates were 3%. Now rates are 6.5 at 1.7%, and the months of supply has remained unchanged.
Absolutely. So those are some of our key predictions. So if I go through that real quick, we think new listing activity should go up relative to a year ago.
Interest rates are going to go down.
We think interest rates should go down. Yep. That's kind of the momentum we have right now. We were recently at 8, and now we're at lower than 6.5.
Yep.
Possibly some positive momentum. Most likely that will have an impact on the new listing activity. We can have more sellers that feel comfortable listing their home because they're changing from potentially a 3 to a 6. However, most sellers are buyers, so we do think the demand will relatively keep up with the new listing activity, and also affordability improves. Take it home from here. So with the new listings, we think closed transactions are going to go where? Up. And then where do we think the essentially prices are going to go up? Up. Yeah. And where do we think months of supply are going to go?
That's going to be interesting to see. Yep. I think it's going to remain relatively around the same. Personally, is my opinion here. Yeah.
Perfect. So now we'll pivot here. two-family space or the duplex inventory in Milwaukee County, absorption rate or months of supply, 2.4 versus 1.5 a year ago. So we're seeing more supply. The median list price, which I do want to mention, even though we don't really talk about it much in the single-family space, is $152,000 versus $134,000 a year ago. That's just what's actually being listed. That's not necessarily showing, the growth in prices, because then our median sales price is $199,000, essentially $200,000 versus $160,000 for the median sales price a year ago. That's up almost 25%. But we need to almost adjust this for the fact that we just listed more higher value properties, probably either better condition properties or better location properties.
Yeah,
so if we adjust this, we're still seeing probably an up 10% or more in price growth.
And I like seeing this on the summary side where you just look at all of 2023, all of 2022.
Yes.
So now just like a month-to-month comparison, because you're right. Like there's way less inventory of duplexes.
Yep.
So if you have a $3 million duplex, like that's going to vastly skew these numbers. I don't know if there's any $3 million duplexes in Milwaukee. But my point here is that prices are up. If you look at the average of this year compared to the average of last year, they're up about 11%, 11.7%.
And that's probably the number we should fix on there.
Yeah.
So not only are people listing their properties for more at up 9%, we're also selling them for more at 11.7%. So people are generally getting more than what they expect they would for their duplex in today's market.
Yep.
Largely due to, yes, we have more months of supply, showing that demand versus supply last year is not as strong, but still very strong relative to what is considered healthy. And then median days on market, 13 days versus 15 days a year ago. So not too much notable change. Sold listings, we saw 130 versus roughly 130 a year ago. Pending listings, 70 versus 100 a year ago. So as we compare pending to what's active, we have roughly flat versus a year ago, 300 listings active now versus about 270 a year ago. A lot of this very well might be, stale, portfolio stuff that's just not priced appropriately. And then new listings, I kind of wish that they did this order of how we pulled the data a little bit different, because it's almost exact opposite of the way we speak to it. New listings up 10%. So that's probably a good indicator here. We've got essentially 150 new listings that came in this month. That's an increase. Hopefully that improves the pending from being down 30 to being closer to flat, leading to some better transactions coming through. We need more supply in the duplex space. We've mentioned it before. It only sits at about 10% of our total inventory, and it should be closer to 15 to 20%.
Yep.
There's a need out there for that duplex space. And a quick hit here on our rents. Slightly increased versus a month ago. We'll continue to track. We're essentially sitting at an average rent of just below $1,200 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in Milwaukee County, and the median sitting around $1,100. So what do you got? So local anecdotes. What do we got going on here? What are you seeing in the market? And then more importantly, what are going to be the offers that win in 2024?
So right now I'm seeing that it's, I would say, a classic wintertime market right now.
Yeah.
Like overall, like people, activity's a little bit lighter, but I feel like the people that I'm working with right now, they're looking to buy or sell. It's more of those life events, or it's those investors that are like really excited about the opportunity of investing in a property. I have started to feel that the good homes are still moving quick.
Yep.
And I think this is kind of what I say every month almost. The good homes that are priced correctly, there still could be several offers received on those. They're still in like a final and best situation where it's got to be softened contingencies, over asking. I would say what's more typical right now is it's competitive, but it's not like it was in the summertime, where if you wanted to buy a home, you maybe had to write or waive inspection. I'm not seeing that right now, but still, there's certain pockets of Milwaukee, certain neighborhoods, certain suburbs that they do still move quick, and you got to be Johnny on the spot to go and see them with several offers in hand from the seller.
Yep, I agree. I've seen a lot of that. We had a team member that wrote an offer on a duplex, and it had 8 offers. We had somebody who probably had one where it sat there for 21 days, and you're the only offer in. A lot of that is usually due to whether it's the condition of the property or potentially listing it higher than what it should have been, or the execution on the marketing. So you find those opportunities, or you create opportunities. What do you got going on there, Mr. Frog?
Yeah, that was weird.
Gonna have to edit that out.
I would say like West Dallas right now continues to be super hot. Bayview is another one too. I've got a couple buyers I'm working with for duplexes in Bayview, and it really just comes down to the property. There's one that we looked at that was a duplex priced around $360. It's been on the market for a month, and then another duplex popped up, also priced at $360. And they said, you need to come in here today because we already received an offer the first day it went live.
Snatched right up.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. So Now we kind of talked about what's actually going on in the market from the statistics. We think that there's going to be more options, but potentially a return of more demand at the same time. What will winning offers look like in 2024?
You know, what I'm kind of nervous about is when rates go down, demand, in my opinion, is going to pick back up.
Yeah.
It's going to start to feel kind of like what the summertime was like this year, which was, I would say, as a buyer, you had to be ready to go. You had to be ready to write aggressive offers. The main thing I hear from buyers right now is they're concerned about interest rates, which is fair. But they're concerned about where rates are, historic highs for the last 10 years. And a lot of them are waiting for rates to go down to make it more affordable to buy their house. And I'd say that's like very common for a lot of home buyers, whether they express that or not, is they're concerned about rates and they're waiting. Well, when that waiting time is over, when rates do go down to a point where maybe the typical buyer is like, you know what, I can stomach this is okay. I think there's going to be a lot of buyers that enter the pool during that period. And I think it's going to become a scenario where it's going to start to become competitive again, where instead of just maybe being 2 to 4 offers, it's 5 to 6 offers, soften contingencies, over asking.
And I think that's the biggest thing I want to remind people, especially if somebody just pops in and they're like, what should I expect in 2024 based on the stats you just shared, is what does this most look like and what do those offers look like that one in that time period? And I would probably reflect back to 2022 when we were in the middle of the year. Rates were up to 4%, 5%, relatively good affordability, still a lot of demand. Sometimes that news of interest rates change kind of trickle out to the consumer a little bit slower, like, ooh, that's a little bit higher than I thought it was going to be when I bought, but I still love the house. Great. We were seeing 10 offers on a lot of the homes that were well executed, especially in those peak months. And we're seeing a lot of the use of the seller not to request amount, which is a inspection allowance where you're not going to negotiate with them. And we're seeing over asking. Like, it's not as much of the over asking $50K, no inspection. It is what kind of not request do we have to do? Because we want to protect our buyers, their earnest money, their ability to exit transactions. Most of our clients that we helped did not waive inspection. They were still protected in some way. Yes, they had some allowances that they gave that made them more likely to move forward in the transaction, but they were still protected in case something big came up. So I think that's the biggest thing. That's generally what a offer should look like in 2024. Very similar to 2023, but maybe even more so, depending on how low interest rates go is going to determine how much buyer demand comes in, and are you going to be competing with 5 offers, 10 offers, or 20 offers?
Yeah, and I will say too, as a seller, you're probably going to might be a better time to sell in terms of getting a better price, getting more eyeballs on there. That is all dependent on if rates drop, obviously. It also might be a time, though, where maybe there is enough new inventory that hits the market, where there's enough new homes on the market where there's still higher demand than supply, but maybe it isn't 12 offers, you know? Let's hope, because I think that would just make it a better situation for everyone that's out in the market right now buying or selling.
I think it would be super healthy to stop interest rates like right at 6%, where it's like it feels better than where we were. It's not like, insanity with like all of these crazy things people will do their contracts just to get into a home. And you get some stability and something to plan around. It's like, okay, maybe it trickles down a little below 6 and a little above a 6. Like, at least we can plan, both sellers and buyers, around, I'm not going to buy in the spring, I want to buy this fall. And it seems like consistently rates are going to be somewhere around a 6. That might change my payment by maybe like $50 to $100, not, $300 to $400, when we're seeing these bigger swings. So that's the hope. So taking a quick pause, what other stats are you looking for more information on? What are your predictions and how wrong do you think we are? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to get your take on what's going to be coming up next in the real estate market, specifically here in Milwaukee. Now let's dive into some news headlines. I'm going through the slideshow here and it's totally blank. What do we got?
Well, we got a lot of headlines here.
Okay, cool.
I think, if we're thinking about 2024, Milwaukee 2024, we could talk about predictions there, but I think there's a lot more happening nationally that I kind of want to talk about, because I think that's maybe a bit more urgent, more pressing. We've kind of hit on this. Fed could cut rates. It sounds like that is likely to happen, that given next year we might see 3 rate cuts. They don't say to what, they don't say to where, but the Fed's goal is to have this soft launch where everything comes together, inflation drops, unemployment is healthy, and the interest rate is healthy as well too. And that's their goal, is to do this without crashing the economy. The Fed is almost like having a little victory lap right now because they feel like it's maybe there. So that's, I don't want to dive into that any further.
Yeah.
There is an article that I want to talk about with you.
Okay.
Because I saw this headline that says, report 44% of all single-family homes purchased in 2023 were by private equity. And I read this article. Companies like BlackRock, companies like Vanguard, these like massive hedge funds and private equity companies. And I've even seen memes if you're on like real estate Instagram or real estate TikTok where it's like BlackRock outbidding grandma by $50K to get her home of her dreams, you know?
Yeah.
I think, though, I was not able to find anywhere in this article where they actually directly cited 44%. So to me, I don't think that this is accurate. I think this is very clickbaity.
Well, the thing's called r/conspiracy. So,
well, okay. But this is a real article. This is an article that was done by, I don't know who it was done by, but the data that they pulled is questionable.
Yeah.
Either way, here's what I would say. I don't think it's 44%. Let's say it's just 20% of homes that were purchased by private equity. That might be high. I do think that this is kind of a concern, in my opinion, of private equity companies that are purchasing single-family homes for the purpose of just using them as rental properties. Because all that does is these companies have billions of dollars, trillions of dollars of deep pockets. They're able to buy a home at whatever they want that still fits the return that they're after. Jeff Bezos has now come out and says that he is launching a new fund to acquire single-family homes across the U.S. This would be like a large investment firm basically acquiring single families with the name of Jeff Bezos backed to it. So if guys like Bezos are getting in on this, it's clearly a venture that is profitable. Also another guy with deep pockets. I think he's the top 5 wealthiest person in the world.
Jeff Bezos backed startup will allow you to become a landlord in just 10 minutes and you only need $100. That's pretty sexy.
You too can be a landlord.
So something I heard that was actually kind of interesting where like you're talking about single family properties, you have the actually good amount of purchasing maybe from private equity. Something I heard recently at a meetup of somebody who's actually participating in a syndication, which is essentially the pooling of people's funds to go buy a bigger building, like an apartment complex or a community of single-family homes. A lot of the syndications people have done were Sunbelts or, you know, in the South, in Arizona, in Florida, in Texas, and those were a lot of equity plays. Well, interest rates, if those syndications didn't have fixed mortgages, meaning they had the nice 4% mortgage, but it was a variable rate, and now those are getting up to 7-8%. They're actually not, instead of doing capital calls, meaning, hey, we have to refinance this mortgage and it's at an 8, instead of them saying, hey, we need you to essentially give us more money, the investor, so that we can actually keep this mortgage, otherwise we're screwed, they're actually buying more properties that instead of being equity focused or appreciation focused in the future, they're buying cash flowing properties
to
offset the mortgage debt. So they're essentially saying, instead of you giving us $40,000 to bridge this debt, give us $40,000. We're going to buy you more properties it's a cash flow. It's a cash flow portfolio. So it's actually interesting how some of these syndicators have been caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
They're actually buying
Their answer is buy more
instead of selling it because we can't have the debt and be a forced seller. So like people are getting more creative with the ways that they're keeping their properties, and generally a lot of these investors that are going into this actually have the capital, have investments that are still performing really well. I think we're only like a few dozen dollars behind the S&P 500 like all-time high right now. So like people's investments are still doing pretty well. Syndication or real estate might be struggling. So what are some unique strategies they're going to do instead of selling properties or all of the single family, which would be a glutton of inventory and it's going to crash the real estate market? Actually, they're buying more.
Yeah, they're doing the opposite.
They're
which I would say is kind of a risky play. Instead of like just hedging their losses, this is their hedge, is buy more with cash flow. And we've seen, even here in Milwaukee, there's a couple large companies. I think there's 2 of them that I could think of off the top of my head that probably own collectively 1,000, give or take, single family homes. And so it's not like this is something new to Milwaukee. It's not a BlackRock. It's not a Jeff Bezos that we know of coming in and buying it, but there are players in Milwaukee that have collectively probably 1,000 doors that are corporate backed, private equity backed. And so this now, the House and the Senate have actually launched a bill, and I know that's probably not the right term to use, but there's a bill on the floor basically to ban hedge funds from single-family housing, basically saying you as a hedge fund, you cannot purchase single-family housing. which I think this is pretty interesting too, because this would be a new bill. There's no sort of control in this space right now in terms of limitations of who can own houses. You can be an international, someone that doesn't even live in the U.S. and own property here in the United States. So there's really no limitations to who or what or how. But this would be, to me, like a very consumer-friendly facing bill if this goes through. But kind of what are your thoughts on this and the idea of it?
I think it makes sense. Essentially what they're saying is like they're trying to create a situation where ordinary Americans are bidding against other ordinary Americans. They're not bidding against billionaires for the houses. That's what it says here in the article. So it's affordability challenges. Is inventory gets soaked up by investors, it creates less supply. And it's people that are locking in potentially better interest rates than what the ordinary person can do because they have such scale and economies of scale that inventory might not come back for a decade, because most long-term real estate investors are holding things for 10 years, 15 years, all that stuff for the appreciation. That's where a lot of the wealth is built. So I think it's interesting they're trying to stop like that in the single-family space. It's like, where do they start that? Residential is determined right now, essentially 1 to 40 units. Is there going to be more mom and pop people can actually compete in that space because of a rule like this? But then the next paragraph says likelihood of passage is low. So do I think it's right? Probably, to limit the way that institutional investors can do this. But sometimes it depends. It's like a lot of these investors, like, are they just coming in, buying properties, putting them on the market and not really improving the communities that they're operating in? Or are these bigger operations who have scale and maybe some sophistication where could they actually improve neighborhoods? Yes, they're creating renter neighborhoods, but is it better quality of life? I don't know. I don't know enough about these companies.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody like, somebody who has so much money like Jeff Bezos could actually improve a community and actually improve the properties, great.
Yeah.
If not,
My
not as big of a fan.
my inkling is that they're probably not in this for community improvement.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like,
Come on.
I don't think that's the motivation. I wish it was.
You're a cynic.
I guess so. I think like this bill to me, I think is great for the average consumer, because we don't want our clients to be competing against BlackRock. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. So I'd also think if this, it sounds like it's not going to pass, but if this were to pass, and would they basically say then, hey, every private equity you need to sell by the end of the year? Because that would be a crazy amount of inventory that would just flock the markets.
I think that would be like saying, hey, you can only have an electronic car starting today. This would be something like they can no longer purchase today.
Yeah.
Now you have to sell everything.
Yeah, I mean, because that would be chaos if that was the case.
No, that would literally obliterate the economy. Yeah, hey, all those houses, can you just put them all on the market at the same time? Yeah, good idea.
Fire sale.
That's why we don't run the government. I can't believe you just had that thought.
Well, no, it's a fun exercise though, right?
Yeah, right.
It's a fun thought experiment. That's what we're here to do.
Sorry, throwing you right on the bus. Okay, pivoting to some of the national topics that we have, like starting with active listing count in the U.S., 754,000 homes. We're still essentially nowhere close to the pre-pandemic peaks of housing inventory. We're very close to where we started to peak a year ago. That makes sense. We're at like the seasonally slow time of the year. As we kind of look at the purchase index, so this is essentially home buyers going out and getting pre-approved. We're starting to see a slight uptick, but still very much below essentially 25-year highs. We've spoken on this in previous episodes. We think there's a huge pent-up demand behind the scenes where this is only new applications, not people who applied 6 months ago, stopped their search, and are crossing their fingers for 5% interest rates. Only time will tell to see, does this dramatically spike if we see rates get down into the 6 and into the 5s. Next up, we have the Zillow observed value index. Milwaukee still holding its spot up there, still top 2. We're seeing the typical home, so 35th to 65th percentile in terms of price. Still sitting around 8.5% increase versus a year ago.
Isn't that what we said?
We said, that's where we said we are predicting for next year.
Yeah.
So this is what actually is happening now versus actually the less expensive homes and the most expensive homes in Milwaukee are dragging this number down a little bit because we're at right around an 8%, 7% over the last couple months here. So
what's going on in Providence?
Yeah, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. So that's rents that we're looking at there.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably a huge shortage of inventory. So now as we look at the Zillow Observed Rent Index, so this is your typical rental. Milwaukee usually sits right around like the top 10, sitting right around up 5% in rent. So the typical home, to buy is going up by 8.5%. The typical home to rent, those rents are going up each year right now by about 5%. So the historical average for both home prices and rents has been around like 3%.
Difference, you're saying?
3% growth each year. So we're seeing that Milwaukee is outpacing not only in home prices, but also in rents. Now, the difference on this is when you buy a home, you lock in your payments, and this could keep, but rent, that can keep on increasing 5% forever. So those are like the biggest things to pay attention to and why we kind of like to compare those at the same time. Now moving on to inflation, which that's been the biggest goal of the Fed, is they're trying to get this down to 2%. As we look at what happened this month, so essentially the forecast was 3.1. Congrats, we came in right at 3.1, down from 3.2% last month. That's our total inflation number. Again, the Fed keeps on saying the battle's not won, too soon to celebrate. However, they're starting to signal some rate drops because, again, they're trying to make money more expensive so that people stop their spending, stopping some of this inflation stuff. Moving into the actual breakout, again, we're sitting at 3.1% for all inflation, but that core inflation number sitting at 4%. And one of the biggest components of shelter making up core inflation at 6.5%. These last 2 months have been essentially, we went from 7.1 to 6.7 to 6.5. This is the moment that people were talking about all of 2022 is all of this leasing activity for shelter is done in 12-month increments. When is that going to start coming down? Are we over reflecting where inflation actually is? Because eventually shelter is going to start coming down in some areas. We just saw on that chart for Zillow that rent prices are still very much going up, and they're going up at a faster rate than they typically do. So definitely this is at the highest level nationally. But now, as we talk about what's going on in inflation, some of the proposed rate drops that are going to be coming here in 2024, we got mortgage rates, and what a great day to do this. Again, we're filming here December 14th, 2023. Rates literally just dropped versus yesterday by 0.2%. That's a pretty big daily drop. I think the biggest one we've seen over the last year or so was like 0.5 percentage point in a day, which was pretty big news. We're sitting at 6.62% versus, essentially the average was, as of like a day ago, was about 6.95. So considerable improvement. Last year, we were sitting at 6.3. So that gap, this is the time where it came down a little bit. We peaked at 7-ish last year. Came down to like 6.3. Now we're at 6.6. We're essentially apples to apples now as we come into the start of this next year. And so you have, as we kind of run through like the inflation piece, some of the home prices going up at the Milwaukee level, and then just like the national mortgage interest rates.
Honestly, no. I think you nailed it.
Perfect. So the biggest thing the Fed is watching is unemployment. We've got this pulled up here. Nationally speaking, we're at 3.7. This is always the weirdest thing. So we saw unemployment go up to, I think it was like 3.8, 3.9 last month. Now what do we have? It's going down, which for some reason, people keeping their jobs or having more job opportunity, bad news. However, generally speaking, the markets have been reacting well to this. Here in our Wisconsin area, unemployment is sitting at 3.2%, so better than the national average. Milwaukee has been tracking the average. So that's some of those like bigger headlines that we have. So I guess as we kind of start wrapping up all of the stuff we covered, some of the national headlines, some of the statistics, some of our predictions, what are our predictions, or what should our home buyers be doing in 2024?
Buyers?
Yeah.
I would say
buyers be buying.
Buyers be that too, yes.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a year where buyers, it feels like if you've been looking for the last year, you're already aware of where rates are.
Yep.
And I think like as rates continue to stay at this price around 6 to 7%, it becomes more normal. It becomes easier to stomach.
Yeah.
Like when there was a massive incline from 4 to 7, that's terrifying because it's not what it's been. But it's like the longer that rates stay where they are, the more normal that feels to the market. As they drop, I think it's going to be, it's almost like right now is the time where buyers, everything's kind of signaling for rates to go lower. I hate being that person that says refi later, but right now it feels like there's less competition in the market for buyers, and things are pointing towards rates will be going down next year.
Yeah.
But it's a gamble you're playing with rates. But I think if rates do go down next year and you're waiting for that, I would say be ready for increased competition.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's like, well, of course, two real estate agents are going to say it's better to buy now than to buy later because, that you're incentivized to say that. But the real stats say we're at 98% of list price, so 2% below asking is about what you can get in the winter months. This last year we were at 4% over asking was typical. There's a 6% spread between winter and summer. So you're going to get the best price regardless. And even if prices started going down, you buy now, you've got that like 6% buffer of, yeah, maybe prices stay the same between January and July because something happens in the environment. It's like, it's going to be the best time to buy. We're getting good relief in interest rates right now. If they go up, you'll be happy you bought. And if they go down, you have the opportunity to refinance. So it's like, it always goes back to what's your why of home ownership. And unfortunately, there's a lot of home buyers I know out there that are not only, oh, I've been shopping in 2023, but also I was looking in 2022 and also in 2021. Now's the time where you start saying like the local indicators are showing there's not a lot of signs showing that it's going to be, you're going to get better prices and better interest rates. You're not going to get both.
As a buyer, there's always going to be something in the market that's going to be a deterrent from buying, no matter what.
Something scary.
Something scary.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, as a buyer right now, you need to make that choice of if it's maybe a higher rate now or if it's more competition later.
Yeah.
Because like I can't make that decision for any buyer, and there might be the right time for the right buyer and a different time for another buyer. But I think that's what the decision the buyers are going to have to make going into next year is, with increased competition, is it better now to have less competition or to wait to maybe get a better rate with more competition?
Yeah, you kind of have to pick your poison. And honestly, the only advice you can give is somebody saving for down payment is like, make sure you're putting your money in the right spot. Don't have it sitting in your checking account earning 0.1. Go find yourself like an Ally, like high savings account that's earning 5%, and give your savings and maybe your reserves that are maybe keeping you from buying that home because you're afraid something's going to break your one. Put more in your reserves and put it in the right savings vehicle that is getting, 4.5%, 5% right now. So make sure you're putting your money in the right spot and saving for those goals. And if it's like, I just can't pull the trigger because something could break on me, save more money. Like it's, that's probably the most important next step you could be doing. Okay. Sellers, what are our predictions? What should we do in 2024?
You tell me.
I think that you should time the market. I really do. Like the indicators are showing sellers are going to continue to win. We're sitting at 2 months of supply. Our home prices are still going up even right now in the wintertime. And if you're looking to time the market where it's somewhat affordable and maybe you get close to a 5% interest rate right now, which isn't too terribly different from the 3 to the 4%, which 4% is closer to the average right now, you are going to time the market in terms of having a good sales price. It's maybe not going to be most optimal if you waited another year. I'm not going to give that, start predicting to what's going to happen in 2025. But yeah, home prices are good. Competition is high. If rates come lower, we know competition will be there. And yes, you'll be competing as a buyer, but you're going to maximize your sale and also be a better interest rate as a buyer. So I'd say try to time the market a little bit. It's probably going to be most competitive if you're listing around March, April.
Love it.
Yeah. Anything to add to that?
I thought you've always said it's not about timing the market. It's about time in the market.
Well, yeah. So technically, if you just keep waiting,
you're doing okay there too.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll probably be fine. At this point, there's no reason saying it will stop in 2025, but we'll make that prediction next year when we're closer to that time. Yeah. Okay, investors. What are you going to do as an investor?
So to me, what I've seen with investors this year is if you're a cash flow investor where you're like, I need a certain cash on cash return of this percentage, rates are going to have a serious impact on your ability to do so. As interest rates drop, I think it's time to start looking to maybe purchase in an area that has a higher average sale price where you can now probably get that same return. If your goal was a 7% cash on cash and you had to go to the average sale price of $150K, but now that rates have dropped, you can start to look at areas of $225 to $250 average sale price if you're following me to get that same return. I think that's now that time where secure yourself in an area that has a higher sales price because that means more appreciation, especially if that means you can get the same return as what you would have with rates where they were previously.
I think I had this conversation.
And also I'd say like as rates go down, competition for investors is going to be heavier than buyers because investors are always buying, always. And rates, they're almost a little bit more sensitive to rates too because they're after a certain metric for return.
Yeah, and honestly, like, unfortunately, it's crazy because a lot of the investors are supposed to be the ones that are more savvy, but it's like they intuitively know more competition will come when the rates increase. It's what we talk about all the time. I think at this point, investing is by nature speculative. Like being an investor, you have to speculate. You have to make your own assumptions. Like maybe you use some of the data we share to actually make the speculations. But like if I'm speculating, duplex inventory is even more low and more unhealthy in the Milwaukee area than the single family space. Interest rates make more people want to buy because they can see better cash flow numbers in the short term, but that means prices are going to go up too. It's like, if I'm speculating, I'm locking myself in when the rates are a little bit more appetizing at 6.5%, 7%, buying in a location that I like. And if rates don't get down to 5, okay, that's fine. I'm comfortable with my investment today. But the upside of if 12 months from now, it's a 5% rate and now prices going up, you just want on both fronts of the price went up and essentially your appreciation went up at the exact same time. Like if I'm speculative, I would be choosing those things based on what we see in the local Milwaukee area and the absorption rate being, or the months of supply being super low. Like that's me being speculative, but that's what investing is.
Yep. Love it.
Yeah. Perfect. So let's see what we got next up here. What's new?
What's new, man? Ty, what's new?
It's the holiday season.
Yeah, well, you just came back from Arizona, right?
Yeah, went to Phoenix for a quick getaway weekend.
Nice.
Used some points for a free flight.
Love it.
Stayed with a buddy.
Okay.
We cooked in for one of the meals, and we made actually an awesome meal of mussels. He smoked a salmon, had a big salad, all that stuff. So it was a really cool vacation. We got a couple hikes and did some
Camelback.
We didn't do Camelback. No,
Yeah, okay.
We did
a little overrated.
We did Devil's Bridge, and we also did Tom's Thumb.
Nice.
So those were both, good active hikes. We played some volleyball, did some pickleball, which is like just in like full force there. We're starting to get some courts here in Milwaukee, but it's like pickleball monsters out there.
Well, it's also retirement center monsters out there in Arizona too.
This is the funniest thing that's happened to me in a while. We were getting there because they don't own pickleball sets. So we went to Dick's, went to go look at, their wall. They have a wall display of all these paddles. And we got like the bundle set, which it's called like the Monarchs or like the Franklin, like entry-level brand.
Yeah.
And we went over there and we started looking, we're like, oh, there's all these pickleball, like, what's up with this? And there was this guy shopping. He's like, we're like, oh my God, look at all these things. He's like, yeah, make sure you don't buy the Monarchs. And we're like sitting there holding Monarchs. And his wife's like, honey, look what's in his hands. And we're like, so what's the difference between that $250 paddle and this $25 one? He's like, you're going to burn right through those Monarchs. So that was just an awesome,
did you get the $250 one?
No, we got the bundle.
Stuck with the Monarchs?
We stuck with the Monarchs, and we played plenty, and totally unnoticeable with our skill level.
Yeah,
so
that's funny.
That's like a funny thing. There's a lot of people who are optimizers, where it's like, hey, we're not training for the Olympics here. We're just trying to have a fun weekend of playing pickleball.
Right.
And it's our first time ever playing.
Yeah.
We're gonna go with the $25
We're doing
Monarchs.
$25. Yeah. When we're doing the Amazon Prime special, we don't need the Cadillac here.
Yeah, that's right. So excellent weekend. It was great. Weather was around 70 degrees. Much better than coming back to 25 degrees here in Milwaukee. But hey, now I feel good sitting on my butt here for a few weeks of the holiday season because I was super active.
You deserve it, man. You need it.
Yeah. How about you? What's new?
Heading out to Vail over Christmas.
Fancy.
Leave next Thursday. There for like 8 days.
Okay.
I want to say. If we want to talk about economics, man. The economics of lift tickets is a racket.
Yeah.
A racket. How much prices have gone up in lift tickets, regardless, though. Yeah, going out there with the family, girlfriend's coming along. She skied for the first time last year.
Yeah.
Everyone warned us, get a lesson for her. Do not self-instruct her. The guy that was at the top was like the ski patrol. He's like, you should not be instructing her. She needs to find someone private. I've seen so many couples that have broken up because the guy tries to teach the girl.
Well, that's because people in relationships love being coached by a significant other, right?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So it was fine. Like I taught her pizza French fry, went down the blacks, and she was just great the whole time. But no, we're going back out there. She got the hang of it last year pretty quick. So
did she get some NAR?
Oh yeah. She shredded. She shreds. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, excited for that. Take some time away, and just kind of relax a bit.
Recharge the batteries.
Absolutely, dude.
Love that. Yeah. I'm jealous. That'll be fun. We might hit our way up to Mount La Crosse, which is slightly different from Vail. But, as we wrap this up, if you find value in this information that we just covered here about the Milwaukee area real estate, please subscribe, hit that bell notification. If you're on the podcast, make sure you subscribe so this podcast hits your inbox every time it comes up and you get that notification. Thanks, and we'll be back again next month with your real estate market update.
Thank you.